Hello. All right. All right. So back to another IncusOS related live stream after a bit of a break since there was the Incus 6.11 release, as well as that video I did on what they did with TrueNAS and Incus. So yeah, back to IncusOS. Also kind of, well, still in other Incus news, today is gonna be an Incus LTS day, so I'm almost done preparing LXC, LXCFS, and Incus 604 LTS. So that's coming up later today for those who are using that in production. Right, so back to IncusOS and where we're at. Quite a few things happened since the last live stream, because it was about 2 weeks ago. So let's take a look first on GitHub, and then building a new image and running that. So last time around, where were we? So about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so that's what got tweaked back then. Keeping track of what application was installed, doing some amount of tweaking around the networking side of things. Incus OSD was finally a daemon at that point. Network config would get applied. So that was much, I think, just before the live stream last week. And since then, there's been a bit of cleaning up, mostly dealing with linting. So Golang CI lint came up with version 2, which changed a bunch of things. So effectively updated to that, fixed a bunch more warnings, but that was about it for that particular week. Then the new exciting stuff that happened this week, I think actually yesterday, yesterday, was merging the logic to install IncusOS. So that's not really something I used in development, because I just, the logic we have lets us easily import, create an Incus image and then boot from that. So we don't need to handle installation, but now we actually can. So if you were to want to install that on an actual system, it's now possible to generate a USB stick that's got the base image on it, that's got a seed partition that includes some basic initial network config, as well as a install JSON or install YAML file that then instructs IncusOS as to what disk it needs to install onto. And effectively what happens is that on first boot, it's gonna go and copy itself to the target disk, and then ask for the install media to be removed, at which point it will reboot the system, and that's gonna be it installed at that point. It actually does auto update and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we've got that now. The other thing that's currently in progress by Matthias is support for a console output. Right now, we do a bunch of logging, but all of that log effectively ends up in the systemd journal, which is not very useful. You don't actually see much going on screen. But with the new text UI, the actual system's console will show status. So it's going to show some basic things like what the IP address is. It will show the host name, will show the current time, so that you can make sure the machine is not locked up, frozen. And it will also show the more important log messages as they happen, as well as being able to show actual progress data for specific activities, like installation of packages, like those extensions. Also, the actual installation onto the target disk, applying updates, all that kind of stuff. So that's currently in progress. The focus for this live stream, like once I've gone through kind of what's the state of things right now, is gonna be on extending IncusOSD to provide some of the initial endpoints for a REST API. You might remember that in the last live stream, I believe, it got turned into a daemon, so that's fine. And the daemon does listen to a Unix socket, but there's nothing on that Unix socket. If you use curl against it, I think it just returns not found for everything or something along those lines. So it's going to be kind of expanding on that, adding an HTTP muxer, adding some initial routes for probably slash and slash 1.0, and just the general structure for the different functions that will handle that. All right, so that's basically where we're at. Now let's look at the current code base. So that's the IncusOS code base as usual. If we go look at IncusOS, the internal, we've got some more stuff in there. Install is what got added very recently. So that keeps growing, it's fine. Now let's go ahead and build ourselves an image. So that's gonna get started, and then I can answer Jared's question, which is what do we want the REST API to do? So the REST API is gonna have to do a bunch of things. It will be used if you need to, change the system's network config later on. You're gonna have to do it through that. If you want to get a recovery key for your encrypted storage, that's how you're gonna do it. If you want to look for updates for the OS itself or for the applications like Incus, that's how you're gonna do that. It's also how we're gonna be doing more complex things like creating clusters and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's gonna be quite a bit happening through that API. Now, as a reminder, because I think I mentioned it a couple of times, but probably worth reminding people here, currently IncusOS, its API runs on a Unix socket. That's not very useful for an OS where, by design, we don't allow anyone to have a shell on it. The reason why we do it that way is because the primary application, so that means Incus, Migration Manager, Operation Center, is expected to then proxy that API. So we don't want to have a separate port with HTTPS, with like having to deal with certificates, let's encrypt, all that kind of stuff, just to manage IncusOS. Instead, you're gonna go through the normal Incus API that you have anyways on that system, and you're gonna be able to hit /OS, which will then forward onto the IncusOS API. That means that Incus or Migration Manager or Operation Center will be in charge of handling authentication and authorization, not just for themselves, but also for the OS Management API. So that makes it a bit easier. It also means that when we need to deal with enterprise environments and compliance and all that kind of stuff, we only have one port to worry about, one actual TLS protected endpoint to worry about security-wise, one thing to configure properly as far as authentication and authorization. And we don't have the problem of, okay, well, Incus was properly configured, but we messed up the config of IncusOS so people can use it to reconfigure Incus and then bypass the authentication authorization mechanism. So yeah, it's going to be a kind of bit of a growing API kind of over time. There's going to be also like some things, like some specific features we need specific configuration. I'm not yet sure how I want the API to be structured around that kind of stuff, but an example would be for LVM cluster. Incus itself can create those storage pools and manage them. That's perfectly fine. There's no problem there. But it needs LVM cluster itself to have been pre-configured. Like each machine needs to have a machine ID, which is an integer, as well as a unique machine name, which is usually the host name. And it needs to have the right daemons running to handle safe locking of storage on LVM cluster. That needs to be configured at the OS level. That's going to be something that the that IncusOS daemon will handle, and that configuration will happen through the IncusOS API. I think at the beginning, the most likely things we're going to put in are, first of all, just the base API, so the 1.0 endpoint of like give me some basic info on that system. So that means returning what we have in the state. So returning the OS version, returning the list of applications and their version. That's pretty straightforward. Also returning a list of API extensions. So that's similar to what we do with Incus. As we add more stuff to the IncusOS API, it will be possible for the clients to detect whether that's supported or not. And then the most likely things we'll do after that are things like update management. So being able to look at, am I up to date? What's currently pending? Okay, go ahead and apply those updates. So adding APIs for that, because that's going to be the most obvious thing that people will need to handle. Then maybe things like reconfiguring the networking. not something we really want people to do constantly, but effectively having a way to push that network configuration, so an equivalent of what you normally have in the seed data, letting you push a new version of it to reconfigure networking on the system. And yeah, then those kind of extra features of like, I want to turn on LVM cluster, that's my unique ID, that's my host name for it, and then we turn on LVM cluster. Down the line, we're going to have things like connecting to Oven. So for that, we need to turn on Open vSwitch, Oven, and some other features and configure them to same thing with like some basic config, like where is the Oven control plane, that kind of stuff. So there's going to be kind of more and more of that adding up. As much as we can, we'll do things automatically ourselves. Like we don't like asking pointless questions to users or exposing pointless configuration options. But there's a bunch of things that are going to need direct interaction. All right, so we've got ourselves a completely up-to-date IncusOS image. So let's go and run that. Okay. I'm actually tempted to try the install feature as well, which would be interesting. So that would make for a slightly different VM, because instead of doing the pre-install thing we're doing now, we'd instead create an empty VM, attach the disk, so the generated disk directly to the VM. And then once we have that, we'd go and we need to write the seed partition with just the install.yaml that says basically install yes. And that would be interesting to try. So I think I'm gonna try that. So right now that IncusOS VM is done and running, so that's fine. So if we go test IncusOS, we're good. This is running with yeah, basically nothing interesting on it. So if we go look IncusOSD, it's run. It's decided that it should starting up development mode. The provider currently unavailable because it's using local, so it would want to install Incus, but it can't because it doesn't have the files yet. So that works as expected. Yeah, let's go and try to use the install feature. I've never actually played with it yet, so that's what I'm saying, let's try, because I actually don't have experience with that yet. But the idea would be delete the VM, create the VM again. So IncusOS VM empty. We'll give it 4 CPUs, 4 gigs of RAM. We need to disable, like not initialize secure boot effectively, so that it can do it itself. And we'll bump the root disk size to 50 gigs. I think that's a decent first config. And then what we need to do is actually customize the disk, right? So I don't remember if we have that in the make file already, do we? Because we can effectively figure out the offset for the seed data partition and then go and write this data, or in this case the tarball with the install YAML directly into place. I don't have the instruction for that here, so we're gonna have to do it slightly differently, I think. What's that seed.tar? Is that just, yeah, just one of mine? Okay. All right, so let's delete that and let's create ourselves our new seed tarball. So go on seed. Network we don't really need to touch. So I'm just gonna do 2 things. I effectively want applications, and I want the install stuff. So for applications, I need a file called applications. Let's do it in YAML. That's slightly easier to read. And then the struct inside it. So there's a version. So we can do version 1. Doesn't matter right now. Applications. It's a list of applications, each of them with a name. So we want to install Incus and we want to install debug. Let's do these two. And then on the install side, let's see what that looks like. Actually, don't remember if we got version on the other ones. If we don't, we're gonna need to add that too, because that's gonna become important down the line, I think. So install. Yeah, so this one also doesn't have versions. When I want to add that version string JSON version. Again, not used right now, might be used down the line if we need to change that stuff. Someone was asking whether I just use plain VI for coding Go. Yeah, I do. I've tried a few times to get onto the VS Code stuff. Every time I do it, I end up using VI from the terminal within that thing, so that doesn't really work. So yeah, I tend to use VI for everything. So I'm just gonna add that missing version field to the two that I noticed. So there's this guy, and there is the, I think network was supposed to be in here. Oh yeah, network types, there we go. That's the one, network config, so version, there we go. Cool, all right, so we've got that in place now. Back to install, so we will install YAML, we'll also do version 1 now that we have that field. And in there, so we can be pretty specific as to what we want to do, what disk do we want to select, do we want to automatically reboot, that kind of stuff. So for this one, we're just gonna do force install, which means if there's already data on the disk, don't care, just go and do it. Force reboot, we don't want that. Target, we don't want to set it, it's gonna pick the one disk we have. So that should be fine. So that should be our seed tarball effectively. So seed.tar, cf seed.tar, all of the YAML files. There we go. And now we need to go and write that into the image at the right spot. So if we go look at the image, oops, wrong folder. Okay, make OSI output, and then we've got a bunch of stuff in here. So we want the most recent, which is this guy, the .ra, and we can see here the seed data partition. So it's the second partition. Ideally, what I would do is DD directly into that partition. That would be the way to do it without having to trust the partition table or anything. I don't have the offset, and I see it here, but between that and right offset for DD, it's a bit of a different thing. So I'm just gonna go do it the lazy way and ask the kernel to parse the partition table for me. And at which point I should be able to just write directly into it. And then release unmap it, and that'd be good. So by doing kpartex, I should have the mapper files now for that partition, for that image. I can see them here. So we want the second partition, which means it's that loop 0p2. And I'll actually into that as root. So I want to cat seed.tar and write it into dev mapper loop 0p2. Okay. With that done, we can do the reverse for kpartex. So just asking it to delete the mapping. And now that disk image should have, oh yeah, that's another, I just see the question of like, is it actual VI, is it Vim, NeoVim? That's Vim, yeah. I don't know why I've never made the switch to NeoVim, and also don't really use any exceptions or anything. I just do the syntax highlighting and that's it. I'm so used to working over SSH on different machines, with my own machines, temporary VMs, custom VMs, random stuff remotely, that I really, like, I don't want to ever depend on any kind of complex setup within VI or Vim, because I'm not gonna find it 3/4 of the time when I need it. All right. So now that base image should have what we need in its seed partition. So that's effectively what you would want to write onto a USB stick now, because every time you're gonna plug that into a machine, it will just install it. So for our VM, we've got that test IncusOS VM. we just see that it's got a root disk, it's empty, there's nothing on there. So we're gonna go and add a new device to it. Test IncusOS, we'll call it install, it's a disk. The source path is all the way to that IncusOS image, make OSI, this guy. All right, so that's the disk we want, and we want to prioritize booting from it. So boot priority 10, and I forgot device here. So device add. Now let's see how that works. So test IncusOS console. It should boot from the drive. Yep, configuring secure boot. Cool. And then it does its usual reboot. So if we go now look at console test IncusOS, come on. Okay. All right, so it's doing its initial boot. Let's see how it goes. It's taking a bit longer than I'd like. I'm not sure what's going on here. Wonder if I messed something up, because that's not normal. Like, I mean, it's normal for repart on boot to take a little while to initialize things. That's too long. I wonder what happened. That's what I get for showing a feature I haven't tested myself yet. Let's see. I want to check the image again, see exactly what it is that we have on there. .raw. Yes, I wrote to P2, which is the SID data, so that's correct. Okay, so that's completely failed to boot. Obviously, it won't give me an actual usable path, so we can see we've got, yeah, the user partition is fine. I don't know why it didn't go with creating the root partition, because there's nothing wrong with that disk. It looks correct. The only thing I messed with is the seed. So I'm kind of confused to what's going on. Okay, I'll just try a restart on this, see if it behaves differently somehow. It should still boot from the additional disk. Okay, it's fine. Oh, there we go. Systemd repart failed. Doesn't tell us why, but it failed. Okay, well, I mean, if that fails, it's normal the next step fails, so it's not gonna go anywhere. I just don't get why it failed. Okay, so that's kind of funny. Yeah, I'm gonna have to debug that one probably afterwards, because that's the kind of thing when I'm debugging it properly, it's gonna require building a bunch of images, and that's gonna take some time. All right. Just gonna recreate a clean image now, because since I've used kpartx and overwrote that particular partition, now just doing make test, we would have ended up with a bootable image that would immediately try to install itself onto something else. So we don't really want that. So I'm just gonna go and rebuild it. Like the partition table itself was fine. So there's some question around the DD trick to directly write. So I can actually show you that. We have it in Migration Manager, where we also use make OSI, and we basically do exactly that. So there's, is it in here? I thought I had an example for that. Is it in the worker? Worker has pack image. Does pack image do it? Sure. No, that just generates the packed image. That's unfortunate. I used to have an example in here that was doing it with DD. But I think we removed that because we've actually moved it to, oh no, it's here. Worker makefile, there we go. Because we moved it to Go now, but this one still has the example. So effectively, we create the tarball, in this case an empty tarball, and we pipe it directly to DD, reading from std, writing into the partition, seeking to the specific offset. We handle writes in 512 bytes chunks, so we don't have problems, and we don't truncate. Otherwise, it would just like wipe the rest of the disk, which we definitely don't want. So yeah, it's there's some mention of like it being a pain to do with DD, and yeah, it kind of is. It's like you need to choose whether to seek or skip. It doesn't quite do the same thing in both cases. The block size, I need to make sure it's correct. You know, also, I mean, in this case, it's not a risk because the partition is 100 megs and we're writing basically nothing to it. But yeah, you need to make sure you don't write more than what the partition can hold. Otherwise, DD will very happily go and override the partition afterwards. So yeah, there's some complexity there, but it's still reasonably straightforward, and let's just do it as an unprivileged user without needing root privileges or nothing. All right, so we should have that image up and running again shortly. And I mean, I'm checking kind of here for what we did with that one. So same thing, secboot. Yeah, there's nothing obviously wrong with the way I've done it earlier. So not sure what weird that it's grow part that was unhappy, and it really shouldn't be. Oh crap, I know why. Yeah, okay, I know why. That's an interesting one. Okay, so I can actually, I'll let that build and then I'll do the demo again because now I know what's going on. It's pretty simple. We, like on boot, grow part needs to extend the partition table to some specific, to fit more partitions. And we used an image that was exactly the correct size. So it didn't have any more space afterwards, and so it failed to grow. Like repart failed to grow the partition table and failed to fit more partitions. That's the issue. So if I just take the image we had and tell truncate to grow it to like 50 gigs total or something like that, then it would work fine. At least I think it would. So I'm just gonna let that image build and we'll do that. I think, like, I'm 99% sure that was the issue. Because like that image is meant to be written onto like a USB stick or onto a larger device. Booting it directly the way I did, that didn't give it any space whatsoever to fit any data onto it. And yeah, it is a bit weird the way we need to do install, because like on first boot, it will effectively extend as if it's its final target on that USB stick, but then it only copies the first partitions onto the actual target and then just remove the remaining partitions from the USB stick to reset its state. All right, cool. So let's do this again. Create the thing. We'll add the disk device, and I need to do the kpartx trick again. Different version, huh? What are we at these days? 56, okay. 56.ra, so we need to, oops, not the D one, we want the A one. Cool. And then we need to cast the seed into it again. And then kpartx D. And this time actually do the truncate. So we want this to be 50 gigs large, thank you. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess it was created as root. All right, now it's 50 gigs large, so now it should actually work. I mean, famous last words, but There's a very good chance that was the issue. Okay. And booting. Great. Still failing. Okay, I think this time okay, now I know why. I grew the disk. I didn't reset the partition table to match, I think. So it's probably looking at whether there's any space left in the partition table, which there isn't. So that's probably the issue, maybe. Let's see. So if I open that in gdisk, what does it show disk-wise? So total free space, 7 sectors, 3.5 kilobytes. Yeah, so that's wrong. What's the command we do? Because that's something we do within Incus on our own disks. We call, I think, sgdisk, and we tell it to effectively resize to match the new block partition. Yeah, it's in here. So we just need to run that command here, and that should make it behave again. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so we just resolve the path and use the path from there. Okay, fine. Move second header. Okay, well, let's try that. So sgdisk move second header. Not sure what's going on with my shell right now, but hopefully I didn't make any typos. That's good. All right. If I do the gdisk on it, what does it show now? Yay, there we go. Total free space, 46.8 gigs. That's what I want to see. So that's good now. And let's start that VM again. So for anyone wondering what the hell was going on here, GPT works with two partition tables, one in the front of the disk, one at the end. Okay, it's still failing. So that's starting to really irritate me because that should definitely have enough space. Okay. So there's two GPT tables, one at the front, one at the back of the disk. So you need to relocate the secondary one to the end so that there's enough space to actually resize things. Now there should be enough space. Now we don't get why it's still complaining. Let me check what our normal size is when we create the test VM. Like maybe I'm not giving it enough space. No, we don't want to give it 50 gigs, so that's not the issue. Yeah, it should definitely fit in the space it's got now, so I don't get why it's still failing. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. That should definitely work. And it's pretty annoying because there's no super good way to debug this. Like the OS is, read-only, so well, there's no shell, there's nothing for us to really poke at. So that's slightly frustrating. Why does it not work? And yeah, with no shell that we can't easily check what's going on with the partitions. Because that secondary disk should show up as 50 gigs, so that's not a problem. It should be able to grow onto that. The first disk is way big enough to hold an actual install, so that's not a problem. Okay, fine. So back to this is a problem for another day. I'll figure out what's going on here. Let's just see if make test works. So that would save us having to regenerate yet another image. So that's just gonna make the root disk directly include that image. There's gonna be a slight issue, as I mentioned, with the seed partition. It's gonna try to install onto another disk, and there's no other disk, so it's probably gonna be a bit mad. But other than that, hopefully the rest works. Like we'll see if repart works. Yeah, it does. This time, no problem. It's doing its job. No idea why it didn't. Oh yeah. Really weird. Because it's the exact same image. Like it's bit for bit the same image, and this time when it's on the root disk, it works perfectly fine. Very weird. All right, so this one is booted now. Let's go in there. At some point we need to actually get some stuff done. It's been like half an hour of just trying to show some stuff. All right, so let's go look at IncusOS. Right, so it failed. No potential installed devices found. That makes sense. So it tried to install itself, and that failed. That makes sense. We could try it the other way around, but that would be a bad idea because then we'd end up with the root disk having the initial install and a secondary disk. Yeah, having the target install, and we wouldn't be able to remove the primary disk. That would get all kind of weird. All right, so just give up on that, and I'm gonna change the seed, just regenerate the seed to not have the install YAML. So just gonna remove that file and do a new seed.tar and push that seed into our test VM. Okay, and then we're just gonna write that directly disk path label seed. Okay, let's restart IncusOS. And this time it's happy and just couldn't find the update files and stuff, so that makes sense. Just recheck the main file, how that stuff works. I think it's test applications that pushes stuff in, at which point it restarts IncusOS. So that should just install Incus and debug if I do that. So let's go and do this. Oops. Yeah, so it's downloaded applications, installed, started, debug Incus, initialization. We should be good. Yep. Cool. So now we're back to having IncusOS running, having a working environment. So I think I've got curl in the debug. Yeah, I do. Cool. So that's what I needed. And we've got our socket under IncusOS Unix socket. There was another question, I think. Yeah, can you put an Incus agent in the init user to make debugging early problems like this easier? Incus exec into busybox. Not super easily. What was the issue with that? It needs some, well, yeah. So the Incus agent, the way it works is that the loader needs to mount some file systems, like effectively 9p, a couple of 9p file systems. Then it copies data from that to /run and then execs from there. The problem with this is until repart has run, we don't have a root partition. We don't have slash at all. We're running everything from like a bare minimal initRD type thing. So that's a bit more of a problem. We literally don't have a normal file system in place yet for us to unpack or put anything in place on at that stage. Trying to remember what I did last time I had to debug this mess. I think I was somehow running it manually. Like I did a build with a much simpler repart setup that would succeed, and then pushed the more complex one in place and then ran it again. I'm not sure. Yeah, in this case, I'm just not sure why it's failing. So I'd probably want to see if I can jack up the debugging somehow so it would complain more and actually tell me what the hell is going on, instead of just saying unit failed and not showing me the output. So there's a question like, would there be any issue running IncusOS on a laptop? I mean, currently the main issue you'd have is that you can't do anything. If you put it on a laptop, there is no plugin prompt, there is no way to get a shell on there. So you can provide the seed data that's needed to get Incus initialized and listening on the network. But because there's currently an Incus issue where we can't trust certificates through pre-seed data, making it possible for you to actually connect to Incus and interact with it is quite tricky right now. So that issue is being worked on by some students on the Incus side. So currently the only way I could make that work on a laptop is by using OpenID Connect as authentication. So you could do that, and then yeah, your laptop would effectively start up and potentially even like get a valid Let's Encrypt certificate and all that stuff, and then you can interact with it, including the Incus UI. But you won't have any way to access the system itself, which, considering we don't currently have a way to trigger things like updates or reboots, any of that kind of stuff, it would be a bit rough. So that's part of why we want to work on the IncusOS API, so that in the near future you'll be able to actually run it on a laptop or on another machine, and then manage it remotely by using probably a command line of like incus admin os something something. And that will just, those commands will run against the remote you're currently on. And that's gonna talk to the OS parts of that system, which, yeah, like most people, that command would just say like, this is not IncusOS, and will just not let you do anything. But for machines that are running IncusOS, then that's how we would be able to manage them. Cool. All right, so we've got the Unix socket. We can poke it. There's a way with curl to access Unix socket, which is pretty convenient. And we can see just return. So that would be slash effectively in the API, and just says page not found right now. So that's what we need to go and mess with a bit and try to add a couple of API routes. So I'm trying to remember where we've put that right now. I'm guessing it's just in the main package, probably, because that was a quick hack. Yeah, there's HTTP imported in here, so that's almost certainly not. And we can see, yeah, there we go. Setup, so that's the web server, and we just see not found handler is the handler for everything. So it just returns 4 for not found for any URL. So we want to change that bit for sure. And part of that means we need to move that to a new package, so that we don't have that stuff just keep growing inside of the main package here. So I think we'll just do something along the lines of this for now. So we'll create a new package called REST, and we're gonna move that that initial logic into there. And okay, so startup tasks are here, listener is here. Okay, so the listener and stuff will all move to the other path. And that's the runtime. Yeah, so a bunch of that logic, like basically that chunk here will move over to a new package. And we're probably gonna end up with something along the lines of server, and say, actually server is not a bad name, but I guess REST is a bit clearer because it's the REST API. I don't want to use API because that's usually the name of the package we use for the public facing structs that you can consume. So I think REST will do it. So we can do rest.new server, and then tell it where we want it basically. So we'll want the file path there. Okay. And that should probably be able to return an error. We like passing context around for everything, so we should do that. And then if that doesn't fail, then we do the final bit of logic is effectively the serve call, again passing it a context, something along those lines. And then that logic can all move away to the new package. So new package time. So let's do internal rest. Let's go with server.go, and that's the new logic. So we want new server, ctx is context.context, but I don't expect us to use it right now, so we can just go quiet like that. And we take a socket path, a string, and then we're gonna return a server pointer to a server, and an error. So we want something like this. Package is REST. We need to import a bunch of stuff. We want OS. What else are we using in here? File path is used. Net is used. HTTP is used. I think that might be all we have right now. Context as well. Okay. All right. So when we do new server, that's okay. We also need the struct for this stuff. So a new server struct here. We'll just do socket path would be a property of that. That's probably useful to keep track. Okay, so create runtime path if missing. So yeah, make there or file path dot we're getting, so we want the directory of the socket path we passed, and we want to have those directories exist as 0700. Actually, yeah, we'll just keep it to make there. It's fine. And then we fail otherwise. Then we define the listener. So the listener, that is the path we're already given. So we just delete the socket path if it exists. And then we immediately set it up again. Actually, like a lot of that logic should be in, not in new server, but it should be on serve. So let's just do this. Serve is, was there any context in any of that stuff? Not really, huh? I wonder, does HTTP server do context? HTTP server, Gorang. Do we have like a serve context these days on this stuff? I'm not surprised if they didn't, because they've added a bunch of those functions over the years now. Serve TLS, serve. I don't actually see much in the way of context in here. There's a shutdown that takes a context. Yeah, doesn't seem to be used much in that package. Okay. All right. Anyway, since it still receives the context, we're just not gonna use it. So that's fine. It returns an error. So in new server itself, the main thing we need to do is actually just define the new struct, and we'll store the socket path that's provided like that, and then we return the struct itself and no errors. So that's just in basic initialization. We could have it create the runtime path. That's probably not a bad idea to actually move that logic in here so that this kind of early validation is done. So that's fine. We can do that. That becomes error. And so in this one, we're actually going to be resetting the socket and binding it. So let's do this. Server, not file handler, and then return serve on it. Okay. Let's see how many problems there are with that package. Time. Okay. I missed time as a needed import. Okay. Cool. So that's working. I mean, it's definitely not gonna be lint free, that's for sure, but at least we get that. Okay, IncusOS is quite mad at me right now, the main daemon. So net HTTP, and time are no longer needed, so that's good. There's imports for that one. And then complaining about error is not defined until here. That's kind of surprising. Okay. Declare the not used server in 965. Right, because this is incorrect. This should be server. There we go. Okay, so we're basically back where we left off, I think. Like the logic is identical. So if we build that statically, so we can push it into our environment. The file push, oops. There we go. That should work the exact same way. So let's just switch it over. So I'm gonna stop IncusOS and then bind mount the new binary over ours and start IncusOS. It's running, it's happy, and it's behaving the exact same. So yeah, we're back to square one, but with a package in, like a new Go package in place now. Let me just check the chat real quick. All right, cool. So yeah, nothing to answer right now. Back to this package. So now what we need to do is actually change the handler. What we want here is a muxer, and so I used to always use Gorilla Mux, but I think these days this is actually deprecated in favor of Go having a decent muxer by default now. Just trying to remember how that works. We're using it in one other project. What's the new one? Just doing a tiny bit of Googling on the side here. I mean, I can go look at the code base. It's in Migration Manager, I think, where we don't use Gorilla, or we use the new Mux. Yeah, we don't have anything there. So it's, yeah, new server Mux gives us a router that we can then attach things to. So let's just see how that works, because I've never played with that myself. Okay, so router, you do new server max, fine. And this function returns an HTTP server. Okay, so what do we do with the router once we're done? Because right now we just add routes to it, that's fine. And then for the server, okay, so the mux, the handler becomes the mux. Okay, that's fine. That's gonna be easy then. We'll just do setup routing. Router is, was it like HTTP, new router max, something like that? Golang, net, HTTP, just putting the documentation. New server max, not root max. New server max. No arguments to that. And then this becomes that. And now here we get to actually add additional routes to it. So that's where we could see, did I close it? Yeah, I did. Oops, not in the right folder anymore. Migration Manager. Okay. Right. So here's where we see those handle functions. So we're actually gonna want to implement basically exactly this one. So I'm just gonna go and yank it out for the top level of the API. So top level of the API is usually just a boring list, which tells you what API versions are supported. So router handle func slash, we want it to be as JSON. If it's not, oh, so I guess it's using slash as the fallback router or something. So it does we want a for anything other than slash itself, which makes sense. Then that part we don't care, that's the redirection for the UI. We definitely don't care about that. We just want it to give us a list of slash 1.0. It's using a package called response here, which is something coming from Incus. I just don't know if they, okay, so when we made a copy of it, I think, because this is not a public package inside of Incus. it's an internal package. So let's see. Right, we just have like a basic copy of that here. We're just gonna go ahead and do another basic copy of it in IncusOS for now. The idea is to eventually make that a public shared package inside of Incus so we can consume it from those projects instead of having to keep copying it around. But that will need a bit more cleanup, which I'm currently doing. Like we want everything to be kind of standard Go clears all of the tests and everything, which some of those packages don't right now. So let's just put it under, so under REST, we'll put response, which means up here, I need to actually import that now. IncusOS, the internal REST response. Okay. Let's see how broken that stuff is now. Internal response, smart, no required module package. Okay, yeah, so I need to actually go and fix up the response package a little bit here. Since it imports some stuff from a util package, what does that do? E-tag hash, okay. Fine, what else? This one imports migration. What do we do from there? Yeah, it's gonna need a bit more cleanup, huh? Kind of tempted to go and replace those with the original version from Incus, actually. See if that's any easier. Not sure it's gonna be, but we'll see. There's a question about like, do I leave myself a node for those kind of cases for this needs to become a public thing and we need to yank them out? Not really, but I'm pretty good at keeping track of those because they become a maintenance pain pretty quickly. So there's a pretty strong incentive for us to get rid of that. It's not likely to stay as like a fork of it for super long. Because yeah, it becomes pretty annoying pretty quickly. And we also see it when we do packaging and that kind of stuff. We see the same package coming up a bunch of times. I'm like, what's going on here? Okay, so this is the Swagger stuff, which we really don't need. It's not yet. I don't know. It's not such a bad thing to have it actually. Except it depends on a bunch of Incus API stuff, which we don't want to deal with. So let's just yank that out for now. Upgrade is for WebSocket stuff, which we don't really care about, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna do that in this package, so we can just simplify things a bit. Now response, what does that import? That imports a bunch of stuff. Okay, I'm pretty tempted to just keep it bare minimum because we don't really do any of the smart stuff, any of this right now. So let's just wipe this stuff, take response, and only do the few we actually need, which is we need sync response. So we need this guy. So empty sync response, sure, that we need. E-tag, we don't need that much, honestly, but we might still need to pull in that e-tag hash function in here. And the rest, I don't think we're gonna care too much about. Because we've got some pretty complex stuff like the file response, which I don't think is gonna be a thing we need to worry about for now. Same thing with forwarded, that's for within clusters, we don't need that. Manual might be useful. So I'm just trying to remove as many of the dependencies as possible. Dev incus response, definitely not the thing we care about, so let's remove that. That's going to be kind of the part with like exporting this stuff too. Like we're probably not going to export everything, but we're going to export a subset of it from Incus and then keep the more specialized stuff in the tree. So I'm basically cutting down all the stuff that we're not expecting to need at this stage. So we just have kind of the basics and we can kind of go from there. Okay, that seems like a reasonable subset. Let's see just how mad it gets at me because I don't really want any of those imports. Oops. Right, so it's quite mad at me. Reproduce and response. That's gonna get annoying. So like there's a bit of a need for smart response. The logger stuff, we should be able to just yank them out. Because that's mostly a convenience. Still in the render. Okay. Yeah, so like write JSON, we don't really need it, but we're gonna need this tiny subset of it. So that's that. Local util API. There's a bunch of API stuff we need. Why? We really don't. Okay. I mean, I don't mind importing the Incus API for that stuff because like this is gonna get embedded within the Incus API. So having some amount of it come from Incus is fine. So we're just gonna import the API. That should fix a bunch of those. Okay, multi-part in OS can go away. It's fine. There's a bunch more debug stuff that I haven't cleared hard enough, looks like. We don't want those code paths. Okay, so there's debug logger that's still left, but otherwise we're mostly fine. Declared, not used, captured, sure. Okay, go away. All right, so local util is used twice, smart error is used once, debug logger. Okay, so from Incus's, so local util would be this guy, I think. There's like an etag function, etag check, etag hash. Which one of the two do we need? Because there was an etag thing in here. Okay, we need the hash one. Fine. Let's go pick up the hash one from HTTP. Okay. So we want etag hash from this guy. Why is it? There. It's a pretty simple function. We just need to move it to the response package. So we're just gonna create a util.go package response. The function is in here. It doesn't need to be exported. It's internal now. And we need to do encoding JSON and SHA-256 are crypto. It's probably crypto. Okay, it also needs format. Okay. Okay. So now we can go back in this one and etag hash, which is here. Can just get renamed like that. This one's gone. Okay, next. There's the other one, debug logger util thing with the JSON write. Yeah, it's debug JSON. I think it's write JSON. So it's this guy we need, which mostly is used to do debugging stuff, I think. Yeah, like we don't need the captured part at all, or the debug logger for that matter. So it's just the rest, which is quite literally just write. Like it's JSON you encoder to the output, set escape HTML, encode body, done. So we're just gonna take the relevant part of it and ignore the rest. So response.go and write JSON is what So instead of that, we're gonna go and actually just do it again. So we get a new encoder. The output is going through the writer, so it's W. And what we need to encode is resp. And not too sure what we've done with errors usually. If something failed, what have we done? There's not a ton we can actually do. Oh, actually it's a render. The render can still fail. Okay, so we can just return and then this one can return now. Cool, 2 for 1, those are gone, and then there's just that smart error here that's still kind of annoying. So pre-purchase and response, if not success, there's API fail, and then it tries to render the errors through smart error. I think we can probably do it through internal error for now. Does that work? Yep, we're good. We've got a response package. Yay. I mean, static analysis is gonna get mad at me for sure, but you know, we've got a response package. So now this one has the import, so that should be fine. Let's see if we can actually build the whole thing. New server mux, not happy. Okay, what did I miss? I thought this was the name. HTTP new server mux. Okay, sure. It's not. All right, so that built. Now in here, let's go do the old dance. So stopping this thing, unmounting the temporary binary, transfer the new daemon, bind mount the new one, and start it. Okay, it's running. Yay! So that effectively does like an Incus style response, so it shows it's a synchronous response, successful, and it lists /1.0 as the next endpoint that's available, which it's not. And we can see here the errors. So we see it's an error, operation, there's no operation tied to it. Error code is 404, not found, no metadata. So that's working basically as expected. The one thing that's kind of surprising is we've got an extra line break when we're dealing with an error than when we're dealing with success. So I'm wondering what's going on there. It's really not important. It's just something I noticed. So let's see. Because this is just a basic 4.4 thing, I'm getting. Yeah, CS code. Oh, actually, CS code success, error code. Oh, no, never mind. CS code 0, type error. Okay. 4.4 not found. So this is the one. Error response. Okay. This seems fine. And that's, we're probably calling it from there, right? So we're sending the same header. And then we're just doing response not found null, render. So it's the renderer for error, so error response that's somehow doing an extra line break. I don't know why. Okay, here, render for errors, what does it do? Buffer, new encoder, output, encode. Okay, what's output? Output is a buffer. Ah, that's a weird way to do it. Okay, I mean that's the issue right here. But why is it done that way? Because we're putting together the response. We've got the headers that need to be sent first. That's fine. We've got the code. Yeah, I don't get why this is done this way. I mean, let's try to change it and see what happens. Because I don't think we need any of that stuff. I think we just need to calculate the response, then set the headers, then the encoder here doesn't need to encode to a buffer, it just needs to encode directly to the writer. At which point we should be done. And we save ourselves a buffer too. That's nice. I mean, there might have been a reason for it initially in Incus, but there definitely isn't in this case. All right. I need to go through the dance again of mounting, pushing the new binary. No, it's still running. Oops, forward to stop it. Stop. There. Push. Bind mount. Start. Running. Curl is fine. Yeah, that's better. All right, so that's good. That's our first route. The second route I would put is 1.0. So let's just go look if we can sort something out very quickly there. I don't want that to take too long. So we can probably check against what we've done in Migration Manager here. For 1.0, what do we do for 1.0? So that's slash. Right, and for 1.0 we actually go through like creating a separate route and dealing with all that stuff. Okay. So it's a question like now that I'm refactoring response, will you also change it in the original Incus source? So yes, for the error one I just did, but I'm pretty sure that I'm reasonably sure that the reason why there's that whole buffer thing is because of the debugging logic we've got in Incus. So I removed the debugging logic here, which is why that code didn't make sense anymore. But I think in Incus it probably will make sense. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. So in Incus we've got that intermediate if debug, then we capture the buffer here. So there's like a multiple writer, and we write the JSON to multiple places, and then we print it differently. So that's why that logic makes sense in Incus. It just doesn't make sense once we remove all of the Incus specific debugging stuff. I think there's still an issue that the ln part here is not needed. So that I think is a reasonable fix in Incus, assuming that Incus has the same line break we had Nats. So we can just try that real quick. But if I try Unix socket, Incus 1.0, okay, Incus 2.0, yeah. Yep, so Incus has the same issue. So yeah, we should just send that over on the Incus side. Yeah. It's Incus the response, remove redundant line break in error. And we just merged a ton of stuff in Incus ahead of the LTS. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a bit of a mess. Yeah. Okay. Just making sure we only have the one commit left. We do, it's good. Push. Right, so that's it for on the Incus side. I'm also just opening the PR for that when I'm at it. Done. Okay, so yeah, the Incus equivalent has been sent. Here, I'm gonna just do a quick example before we wrap up the stream for 1.0. This is probably not gonna be how it's gonna stay, but it can probably do the trick for now. So in this case, I want to return resp, and so if we kind of structure it around the same layout as what we have on the Incus side, it kind of looks like this. So we'd want the OS version. And then kind of applications and that kind of stuff. So applications, we could just like do a yeah, let's do the same format as Incus. I don't really love it. We'll probably do something different. But we'll do application names and then applications version, I think something else. What we do in Incus. Yeah, so like storage and then storage version. Well, actually, yeah, the metadata is more structured. Never mind. So it's the config that's not, but the metadata can be structured in Incus. So let's do it that way. So then applications is more structured and is a map. It's a list of map string, I guess. That should be fine. Let's do something like that. So slice of maps. Well, I should just pass the applications here, I guess. Applications and OS versions. We just need to actually have the data to pass into that struct, which then goes into the renderer. So to make that work, we're gonna need access to the state. I think that's where we've got all of that data. There's a separate object called state that we should be able to have access to access all that, to get that stuff. So we can probably do new server, and in new server we actually do want the state, which is a pointer to state.state. Something like that. Need to import the state package, and we want to keep track of state here. So it's state.state. And we're just gonna set it here like that. And then IncusOS, when we do new server, we're gonna pass in the state. Is it called state in here? Probably not, because it would be yeah, that wouldn't really work. Also, we don't have the state at that stage. Where's the state? Ah, there we go. Get persistent state. Right. Okay. It's funny, like some of that logic doesn't make too much sense anymore. So let's pick up this, move it around here. So we do the logger first, and then we get the state, which then gets us S. So S is the state we need. So we pass that through like that. And we need to also pass it to startup here. And actually, I think startup, we should make sure to save the state after startup has run. So where's that? Yeah, the defer here should also be here. So ctx, and then s is state.state. Okay, so the general wiring is probably fine. Now we need to actually get from the state, what's in there again? State running release is the OS version, and then the applications is a map string applications. We should just return that. Okay, let's try that. So now in here, I've got access to the state. I'm gonna get yelled at by the static analysis for doing this, because that's shadowing an import, so we need to do this. And then in here, so that becomes s.state.current release, was it? Running release. running release. And then this is s.state.applications. Okay. That builds. Okay, so let's see what that looks like now. If I go and again unmount, stop, transfer the new binary. Hey, transfer the new binary. Bind mount this, start it, journal is fine, curl outputs, there we go. Unfortunately, we don't have JQ installed. That would make it a lot easier to read, but we can see that's our metadata. Okay, so we've got metadata twice, which is that's not quite the structure I had in mind. What does that look like on Incus again? Let's just do that. Lib Incus Linux socket. That's out of mess. Metadata config API extensions. That's all of the API stuff. After API, oh, it's environments that it's called, not metadata. That's why. Let me just fix that. Where is it? Here. So let's environment. Okay. Build this stuff. Play that dance again. Mount. Stop. Push. Bind mount. Start. Go. There we go. Metadata. Environment. Applications tells us that debug is initialized and is running that specific version. Incus is also initialized, running that specific version, and the OS version is the same. So that's our 1.0 endpoint with the most basic data, basically just telling us what the OS version is, telling us what the applications are and what version they're running. So that's probably gonna be it for the for this this live stream. It effectively added the two initial API routes. So we've got /, which just tells us what APIs are supported, which is 1.0. And then we've got 1.0, and we also support errors for anything that doesn't exist. So that's a good first point. There's a question from Jared about why I'm doing the bind mount thing instead of just copying. Because everything is read-only is the answer. /root is writable, but user local bin is not. So I'm not able, so you know, if it wasn't mounted, so if I do my bind mount and I try to copy IncusOSD on user local bin IncusOSD, that doesn't let me do it because it's read-only. So when you're in that kind of situation, your best bet is to use bind mounts to just kind of shadow the file, then restart the service and picks up the new binary. So that's what's going on there. All right, so that's some pretty good progress. If we just go look at what we have. So basically, the main command actually got slightly simpler, possibly. So less imports. We've been moving the state logic up a tiny bit into the run function instead of just the startup stuff. And then the diff is quite horrendous, honestly. It didn't do a good job at diffing this one, but the API is quite a bit simpler because we've moved that into its own package. So the overall for this file should be a negative, I think. Yep, 22 insertions, 38 deletions. So that file is getting a bit cleaner as a result of that. So that's good. And then we've got all of the other logic. So response, which is mostly a copy from Incus, minus removing all those bits we don't care about. Response util, which just has the bits we needed from Incus for etag hashing, which we are gonna need in IncusOSD. And then the REST server itself with currently 2 hard-coded routes. The plan obviously is for that for the API endpoints to move to two separate files. Like the server itself should just put in place the handler, and then all of the API routes and stuff should be in their own file, kind of the same way we've done in Incus, the same way we've done it in Migration Manager and other places. And yeah, there's a bit of cleaning up with adding the version fields to both the install and network structs. So I can probably actually commit that separately. Add versioning to network and install data. So IncusOS, that's in internal seed and internal seed for both. Oops, that VI kit. All right. So that's stuff isolated. The rest, as I said, I'm expecting to get yelled at by static analysis. I'm gonna need to deal with those. Seriously? That doesn't make sense. Like for one thing, there's no description for that REST package, so that's not normal. It should not have cleared. So there's a bug with how we run static analysis, I think. Or something else changed in. Oh, I know what's going on. Yeah, I'm running an old version of Golang CI lint. That's why. Let me fix that. It's not a good behavior actually for it to not complain when it's getting a config it doesn't understand. What's the Golang CI? Need the go install command for it basically, because they've got some pre-built binaries and stuff here, but also I think they've got just a plain old go install. There we go. But that's the old version of the doc, so that's good. Anyway, it's just v200 or something is the current version I care about. Because I said, like, they've changed syntax quite a bit, so that's why I didn't pick up anything. 202 is the current. Okay, fine. Unknown revision. Why? What's going on? Yeah. Okay, so is this one the newer guide? Yeah, this one is correct. No idea why the first result on Google doesn't line up, but sure. Jared being like, take the win. It's like, well, the problem is that our CI is gonna run Golang CI lint correctly, and it's gonna yell at me at that point. So I might as well figure out the damage beforehand. Okay. So now static analysis should do a correct run and yell at me, hopefully. There we go. That's more like it. I think it's actually complaining about stuff that's not even my fault. Nah, not really. It's still my fault from the previous commit. I'm just not sure why. It's the alignment thing with the with the lining up here. Yeah, it really wants this, which makes sense, but the automatic formatting doesn't do it, so that's slightly annoying. There we go, that one's fixed. And the rest probably gonna take a bit longer to fix, I suspect. What do we have in here? Yeah, not properly formatted. Well, that's an easy one. So it should be happy with the formatting now, you'd think. Yeah, and then there's like some issues with response itself, which is kind of interesting. Oh yeah, no, it's not a shared package, because I fixed a lot of those in Incus yesterday, but I didn't do that package, so that's gonna need fixing. A bit of other stuff's gonna need fixing. So yeah, I'm gonna be tidying that stuff up, probably also splitting those handlers into its own, into a separate file instead of putting everything in server.go as it is right now. And that's gonna be the very, very early on API. At this point, there's nothing user controllable. It's literally just getting info. But now we've got a router, and once you've got the REST API router, it's very easy to add more and more functions to it at different URLs. So yeah, that's it for today. That was a bit of a longer stream, I think, than usual. I'm usually trying to keep it around an hour, and that went an hour and a half. But a bunch of that was trying to mess with the install logic, which didn't really behave the way I wanted it. So yeah, that's the current state of IncusOS. We're making good progress on that. As mentioned, we've got Matthias who's working basically full time on the text UI now. Possibly he's gonna have to look at what's going on with the install stuff here, but yeah, now we're gonna be adding more and more features to that. I think one of the things I need to do next is adding a tiny bit of logic to Incus itself, so that if it detects IncusOSD, it does the wiring for the API. That way we can test it remotely with the Incus API client instead of having to run curl locally. So that's going to be a very easy change to send to Incus. So I'm probably going to do that hopefully later today. And otherwise, we'll catch you all up next week with probably another stream of doing some other IncusOS stuff. Just trying to, one step at a time, getting this thing to a point where we're happy to have people run it at home or in production. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you around in the next video. Thanks. Bye.